So thanks for logging on to learn a little bit more about the Scottsdale Road Bike Lane project. Today we're going to hear from Senior Transportation Planner Chase Wallman. He'll present for about 15 minutes. We also have on the call some other transportation professionals, and they'll be able to hop on after the presentation in addition with Chase for a Q&A. So if you can jot down any questions that you think of in the chat and then hold your questions till the Q&A session, then we'll be able to go ahead and get started, and I'll toss it over to Chase.
Great. Thank you, Brenda. Yeah, good afternoon, everyone. First, thank you for spending your lunch hour with us to give feedback on our draft 60% design plans for the Scottsdale Road Bike Lane project. As Brenda said, I'm Chase Wallman, Senior Transportation Planner with the City of Tempe. And with that, I'll go ahead and get started. For those that weren't able to join us during the first round of public meetings last fall in November, the purpose of this project is to extend the bike lanes that currently end on Scottsdale Road at our border with the city of Scottsdale, which is Continental Drive or Roosevelt Street in Scottsdale. So the purpose of this project is to extend those bike lanes south just over a mile to our existing bike lanes at Curry Road that you can see on the right side. In addition to the bike lanes, there's also additional improvements that'll be in the scope of this project. One, a new traffic signal at Lilac Drive. Along the project corridor at all the street crossings, we'll be improving all the ramps so that they're ADA compliant. A change from our original preliminary design is the introduction of a buffer space within in between the bike lane and the vehicular lane. So that'll be a new change from those who joined us in the first round of public meetings. Additional ADA compliant pedestrian push buttons, ADA driveway improvements within city right of way. So as part of this project, the bike lanes are primarily accomplished through the narrowing of traffic lane width. However, there will be some portions that will require curb reconstruction or median reconstruction. And so in those areas of curb reconstruction, if it's within the city right of way, we'll also be improving those driveways to make sure those are ADA compliant, as well as the whole project corridor will receive a pavement preservation treatment, which will be micro mill and micro sealing. A little bit about the background of this project. The project was originally identified in Tempe's Transportation Master Plan, as well as the connectivity portion of the General Plan 2040. In 2017, staff pursued and were awarded a construction grant of just over 1.2 million for the construction of the project. And in 2020, staff also pursued an additional grant, this time to fund the design of the project. So we were awarded those two grants for construction and design, and we kicked off our final design in 2021 with our selected design consultant, Enfra. The picture on the right will be a video showing some of the existing conditions, of what you would likely see on there is for any cyclists, probably more comfortable on the sidewalk. So this video on the right is just north of Hancock Avenue and working their way south along the sidewalk. And just some things to point out here. You can see the relatively wide width of that outside curb lane. Of course, with the sidewalk, you have to be cognizant of the vehicles that are exiting driveways. Here we have a wrong way cyclist on the same sidewalk. So it just shows some of the typical conditions or some of the existing conditions that you would see for bicyclists along Scottsdale Road that choose to ride on the sidewalk there. I wanted to mention that this project, of course, Scottsdale Road is a major arterial for us, so it receives traffic volumes about 35,000 to 40,000. These were taken in 2018. And then along the project corridor, there's also a relatively high amount of serious pedestrian and cyclist crashes, 20 total in between 2012 and 2020. And finally, the video ends here at our southern terminus of the project, which is the existing Curry Road bike lanes. This slide is showing a summary of our first round of public meetings, which we held in November. In total, we received 40 unique survey responses, of which 85% of the respondents were in favor, 12.5 not, and 2.5 neutral. But more importantly, what I wanted to point out here on the slide were the number of respondents that mentioned the desire to have more than a standard bike lane. So as I mentioned briefly, in our preliminary design, we were showing a standard bike lane with a 6.5 feet with a standard bike lane stripe, and 52.5% of the respondents, just over half, mentioned that they desired more than just a standard bike lane, and that they desired to have a buffer space in between the vehicular lane and bike lane. So with that feedback, we reviewed with our traffic engineering team as well as the design consultant Enfra to refine the designs, which we'll be presenting now to include that buffer space in between the bike lane and the vehicular lanes. So first, I wanted to point everyone here to a proposed improvement that we'll have within the buffer space, and that is the introduction of these low-profile channelization devices. So you might be familiar with these devices shown here on the screen on Ash Avenue, separating the streetcar alignment from the bike lane here. So we were proposing to use a product similar to this within the buffer space in between the bike lanes and vehicular lanes. And so these are placed about 1 foot off center, and they're going to be placed where feasible in the buffer space, but there will be breaks in these low profile channelization devices where turning movements need to occur. So at driveways, at bus stops, and at intersections, you'll see that this continuous lane of these low profile channelization devices, there'll be breaks during the turning movements. Apologies. This is another photo showing the existing conditions along Ash Avenue, showing these low profile channelization devices in use here. This is near a roundabout at First Street. The photo on the right, I just wanted to point everyone's attention to as well. These are the same devices, but with an added vertical delineator. So this is feedback that we received as well from the first round of public meetings, where we received feedback requesting that we look at the feasibility of adding these delineators. So as part of this project scope, we will be adding those in a test section so that we can understand some of the maintenance responsibilities with that. So although most of the segment will be the low profile channelization devices, we will be testing out a section along this project corridor with these vertical delineators so that we could pilot it, and if it's successful and not a maintenance concern for us, then we like to get your feedback on that so that we can implement this in other projects or later on as part of this project. Also added to the scope of this project from the preliminary design, we had mentioned it briefly that we had a separately funded highway safety improvement program funded grant to provide for a signal in the area of Cavalier and Lilac Drive, which is of course in our project area. So in order to reduce the impacts on the neighborhood with construction of this project, we consolidated this traffic signal project into the design scope for this project. So we'll be coordinating this new signals construction with the construction of the Scottsdale Road bike lane project at the same time. So this is an existing condition photo just south of Lilac Drive looking north. And then this is a conceptual rendering showing the new buffered bike lane alternative, as well as those new traffic signal at Lilac Drive. And I did want to note as well, which we'll cover in another slide coming up, is that in response to resident feedback as well as feedback from internally from Tempe Police Department, we are looking to pilot placing a median fence at this location, which is just south of Lilac Drive. So I'll go into that into greater detail, but this is just a conceptual rendering. This is not what the fencing design will look at, as we have not designed that fence yet. But this gives you an idea of that new signal there at Lilac Drive. This is a little bit closer up view of that area and showing some of the impacts here. So this new traffic signal will be placed at Lilac Drive, and I wanted to note some important considerations as far as northbound access into Cavalier Drive. So with this new traffic signal, Cavalier Drive becomes a right in, right out, meaning that northbound traffic would alternatively have to use the Hancock Avenue intersection if they're going northbound and wanting to go into the Cavalier Hills neighborhood. So that's about 800 feet to the south of this location. So you can see with this new traffic signal, the new striping configuration would add a dedicated left turn lane for southbound users going to Lilac Drive, and then northbound users would alternatively have to turn left at Hancock Avenue, and then leaving Cavalier Drive will be a right in, right out. This is the area between Hancock and Cavalier. So again, the same area. This is more of a zoomed out view. What I wanted to point out in this, and as I mentioned with the median fence, we received feedback from residents as well as the Tempe Police Department that were concerned with the unsignalized pedestrian crossings, specifically at this location in between Hancock and Cavalier Drive. And following that feedback, we met with Tempe Police Department internally, as well with our right-of-way maintenance staff and our traffic engineering team. And it was decided to pilot a project, a temporary fence solution within these two medians in between Hancock and Cavalier Drive. So that pilot project will be taking place soon. So you'll probably see some temporary fencing in these two medians. And our traffic engineering team, as well as the Tempe Police Department, will monitor this pilot project and see if it's effective in addressing those concerns. If it is, then we will also look to add a permanent fence design as part of this project's design scope. But we're going to try this pilot project first and see if that addresses the concerns. If it does, then we'll look to have an integrated fence design as part of this project. So this is the zoom out view. You can see Hancock Avenue to the south, the two median locations with these median fencings, as well as the new traffic signal at Lilac Drive. As part of this redesign, we also wanted to offer alternatives for the striping of the 8 feet that we have available to work with. So we are asking for feedback on 2 different striping alternatives. The first being a 3-foot buffer alternative, where you would have a 3-foot buffer in between vehicular lanes and bicycle lane, and the bike lane would be 5 feet, or a 2-foot buffer alternative where you would have a 2-foot buffer space and then a 6-foot bike lane. In either case, we will be including those low profile channelization devices within the buffer space for either alternative. This last slide is going to show the 2 striping alternatives in our roll plot view. It's going to work from Curry Road north to Continental Drive. The area here on the west side, so on the top of your screen, is the area where we would need to do new curb reconstruction. So you'll see we're calling out new driveways here and curb reconstruction from Curry to Weber on the west side of the street. On the left video, you'll see the 2-foot alternative. On the right video, you'll see the 3-foot buffer alternative. You'll also see, and you'll be able to zoom in on the website closer to these. I know this is kind of scrolling through fast, but you'll be able to see within the buffer space that we also have those low profile channelization devices. There'll be some areas called out for new median reconstruction, and that's to align the new striping. So in this particular case, the median's getting wider. This is another section of curb reconstruction. It's a short section here just south of Fillmore Street, where we'll be doing curb reconstruction, this time on the east side of the street. And then for the rest of the segment, primarily you'll see that we're gaining the space through the reduction of the vehicular travel lane widths along the project corridor. So at these street crossings, you'll see that we're calling out new directional ramp improvements. And then periodically you'll see those green bike lane symbols, the green thermoplastic, as well as our standard bike lane symbols. And then this final section is our northern terminus with Continental Drive, Roosevelt Street, showing the bike lanes continuing through the city of Scottsdale, and those end just north of Thomas Road. As far as next steps, we just presented to our Transportation Commission. This is our first of 2 public meetings. for the second round of public meetings. So we'll be holding the same presentation again on Saturday virtually at 9 a.m. Once we get that feedback, we'll have our public comment period open for 2 weeks starting today until March 4th. So that survey is available so we can get your recorded comments. That survey is available at tempe.gov/forum, where we'll be asking your feedback on those alternatives for the striping, as well as any other feedback that you have for the project. And then you can view those roll plots and zoom in a little bit closer to all the project materials at our project web page, which is tempe.gov/Scottsdale Road Bike Lanes. But we'll gather that feedback in the next couple of weeks, and we'll also review internally with all of our city departments and other stakeholders. And then we will refine that design and plan to finalize our design this summer. It's our hope that, in keeping with that schedule, that we would be able to advertise this project for construction bids in the early part of 2023, and would anticipate construction starting in the summer of 2023. With that, I also included my contact information. If anyone has any additional questions after this Q&A period starts, you could contact me there, and I'm happy to answer any questions about the project. But otherwise, wanted to thank everyone for their time today and giving their feedback. And I think with that, Brenda, we could go ahead and start the Q&A.
Excellent. All right. Well, happy to see that we have a lot of comments here. So Jacob, you were first up, and I'd like to invite you to maybe, if you want to just read yours out loud or address, because I think you had a couple. If you don't want to, that's okay. I can go ahead and just read this and we'll get it answered. Okay, so it looks like Jacob would like to say, in addition to the traffic light a short bit south of McKellips at Lilac, would there be a possibility of adding either a traffic light or even a pedestrian only light north of McKellips, about halfway between McKellips and Continental, maybe at Fillmore? There are regular people crossing the open street there, and it could help reduce that by meaning people don't have to walk so far to the actual traffic lights.
Yeah, thank you for that question. I'll direct that question probably to our traffic engineering team. We don't have any additional scope in this project that we would include an additional pedestrian signal along the project corridor, but I would direct the question to either Ellie or Kathy Hollow, our city traffic engineer, who's also joined us today, if they wanted to answer that as far as when a new signal is warranted.
Thanks, Chase. This had not been on our radar for this project or for future work. So at this point, we'll add it to our list of areas to study and get some counts so that we can find out if in fact the signal is warranted, and then go from there. But right now there aren't any plans to put one in north of McKellips.
Okay, thank you. Let's see. Next we have, let's see, Marion. She says, thanks for listening to our input. Are the lanes going to be painted as well?
That might be directed, and Marion, correct me if I'm wrong, if you're talking about the green paint and the bike lane symbols. If that's what you're talking about, we will have the green thermoplastic bike lane symbols that you see, those kind of rectangles, those green rectangles with the bike lane symbol. We'll have that throughout the project corridor, as well as the standard bike lane symbol, and then there'll be the striped buffer, which will have striping. You can see the striping configuration a little bit better on the roll plots. You'll be able to zoom in and kind of see what the striping will actually look like on the road there. So I hope that
you'll have the entirety of the lane then painted as a green lane, right? Correct?
No, not for the whole segment. The whole segment will not be green. It will be in the areas that we have the bike lane symbols. Those will be green, but the entire length of the bike lane will not be green.
Okay. Well, if I can make a suggestion, I think the more visible those are, the better. So I'm not sure you can include that in your provisional planning, but I think that's a good deterrent for, I know a physical buffer is necessary, but the visibility is also a good point to add.
Yeah, thank you, Marion. And we'll discuss that with our traffic engineering team as well. Thank you.
And then another comment from Jacob, just a feedback. The low profile devices would be great. It would help feel be much safer. And then we have a comment from Kelly Marie. I think full green paint is also necessary in order to draw extra attention from drivers, both local and visitors from other states. Another comment from Jacob, thinking the 3-inch buff or 3-foot buffer makes more sense. I'm not sure what the dimensions are, but yeah, feet. Motors should give 3 feet, so a 3-foot buffer is kind of logical. Then just kind of some comments here. Larger buffer if there's a physical buffer. Cars often drive and cross the buffer. It's just a line painted on the road. I don't know if there's some few buffer comments in here if you want to speak a little bit to that.
Yeah, so that image on Ash Avenue, those are the type of devices that we'll specify as part of this project, and they'll be placed at pretty high frequency. The only consideration where there'll be brakes is when we have driveways. So whenever those right turn movements need to occur, you'll see a brake in those low profile channelization devices. You can get an idea for where those devices are in those roll plots. If you zoom in, they look like little white rectangles. They're just conceptually shown at this stage, but it gives you an idea of the frequency of those, as well as the brakes that need to occur to accommodate transit or right turning vehicles to driveways or intersections.
Okay, excellent. Thank you, Chase. And then Kevin has a comment a little bit about asking where the feedback, where we're getting feedback from residents. It was his first time hearing about the project. So we'll address that in just a moment. Also, a comment about the issue with pedestrians crossing the street will not be addressed by adding a necessary traffic light. A light at Lilac will make it 4 lights in about 3/4 of a mile and 5 lights in a mile on a main thoroughfare. Absurd. The pedestrian comment is due to homeless and drug addicts crossing the street between the Motel 6, the QT, and the Palms. So this is a longer one. Sorry about that. They're not law-abiding citizens that use crosswalks. They will cross 25 feet before existing crosswalks. So yeah, I that's Chase. If you want to toss it over or hop on for that one.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, thank you for those comments and the feedback. The traffic signal was a separately funded project that we received. It was a safety improvement project, and I think our traffic engineering team, Kathy Holler, our city traffic engineer, could probably speak to it more as far as the need for the signal there. But that was a separately programmed project. We had mentioned in our first round of public meetings in November that we would be consolidating that traffic signal, though we didn't have a location at that time. We just knew that it was going to be near Cavalier and Lilac. So after the design consultants and our traffic engineering team reviewed locations, this was the selected alternative as far as the safety. But I'll let Kathy, if you had any additional comments from that feedback. We did hold, I think I have it here on the schedule. Our first round of public meeting was in November. So we have all of our project materials available on the webpage, which will include this round of public meetings as well as our previous. Sorry, Kathy, go ahead.
No, that's fine. You did a good job summarizing it. We this area started to be looked at kind of outside of this project as a result of some data that we received from the Maricopa Association of Governments, which looks at crashes and safety all across the valley. And this location was identified as one that had a maybe on above the average. I won't say exactly what, I don't know exactly what the number is off the top of my head, but had above average for crashes for pedestrians. And then the we have a number of, as everybody has mentioned, the crossings that occur. So because of that, we started looking at a potential for a signal in this location due to the crash data that we had received. So I hope that helps a little bit.
And thank you, Kathy. Kevin raised his hand, so feel free to unmute yourself since we're still on your question.
Okay, so like another concern is, so I know it's an issue with like accidents and safety there, but the traffic light won't solve anything. It's the homeless that the city of Tempe refuses to address. Like they're going to do it. They're going to keep doing it. They literally don't care if there's a crosswalk or not. If you put a fence in, they're just going to step over it. They literally do not care, right? And so by putting this in, now there's a very popular gym on the corner of Scottsdale and Cavalier Hills. That gets a lot of cars parking there. It's a what do they call it? A CrossFit gym, right? And so there's a ton of people coming in all the time. If they can't turn left there, now they're gonna have to be rerouted right through that neighborhood. How much safer is that to have regular traffic driving through neighborhoods?
Okay, so Chase, I'll jump on. So appreciate your comment, especially your comments directly about the signal and the location. This is one of the reasons we have this meeting, in order to hear this kind of comments. With regards to who is actually crossing the street, is this going to solve it? No, but it's a start, right? We have to start somewhere. We have to see even if we can cut down on half the number that are crossing, because some people may read we're adding signs with the fencing as well that says no crossing here. And that in turn, sorry, what should have been mentioned, that in turn helps police to be able to ticket people. And that will get some people's attention. It won't, you're right, it won't probably completely solve the problem, but I think at this point it's a start for us, for the city to try and address the problem. Chase, did you have anything else you want to say?
No, yeah, thank you, Kathy. I think that was the purpose of this pilot project as well, in conjunction with the Tempe Police Department, so we could see how that fencing alternative works in those median locations.
Thank you. Kim had her hand raised, but we'll get to Kim right after Josh, because we're kind of going in order. So Kim will get to you right after Josh. So Josh asked, are there plans to also address missing striping between Curry and Weber on College? Also, are there plans to add additional bike lanes such as those south of Curry on Scottsdale?
As part of this project scope, it's just going to be Scottsdale Road from Curry to Continental Drive. We do have identified bike lanes further south of Curry Road in our transportation master plan, so that it is an identified improvement for the future, though there's no funding at this time for the continuation south of Curry Road. So this project scope specifically would not touch College. It would just be Scottsdale Road from Curry to Continental Drive.
Okay, and we can put a link maybe in the chat to that master plan in a bit.
Yeah.
And Kim, feel free to unmute yourself. I see here that you have several comments that you'd like to go.
Hi. Scottsdale Road is a big concern for me because of all the turn-ins and turnouts. So I would highly recommend whatever buffer that you can provide. And because I worry about, especially at night, because it turns dark early during the winter, putting some kind of reflective upright buffer there so that vehicles see that. The breaks where the turn-ins and turnouts are for the businesses, I agree completely with trying to stripe as much with the green striping to identify the bike lanes, and then breaking them at the turn-ins and turnouts for the businesses, because it not only helps the drivers, but it also helps the bicyclists be aware, because if they're going at a pretty good clip, they may not always, have an opportunity to look, to their side to see if there's a driveway coming up or whatever. And I think it would help them completely. The other thing that I was thinking about the fencing, I think you're going to find you're going to need more fencing than what the pilot initially calls for. I agree. I've almost hit people, especially in the evening, crossing there, that are wearing dark clothing, and you don't see them till they start to cross. But the thing with the fencing too is, one thing that I'm really hoping that we get is some kind of a monument at McKellips and Scottsdale Road. I know that's not part of your project, but if we do end up putting in permanent fencing, I would hope that there would be some way to coordinate with that monument so we have a really cohesive look along Scottsdale Road, between a monument and possibly that fencing. One more thing is that when those medians were re-landscaped, they never did replace those curbs, and the curbs are deteriorating all along those median plantings. So I know that I would not object to having those medians slightly reduced. And I don't think it would impact the plantings that much, but that would also give you more space in order to accommodate the bike lanes. And maybe some of those, the two middle lanes on Scottsdale Road are really not that wide. The curb one, you're right, is wider. So that may help in that regards. And I think that's it. Thanks.
Great. Yeah, thank you, Kim, for your feedback there. And
Could I do a follow? I'm sorry, Kim, can I do a follow-up, Chase, real quick?
yeah, go ahead, Kathy.
Are there pieces of curb missing on the median, or it's starting to break up? Is that what you said? It's starting to break up and we need to maybe start looking at it, or there's pieces missing?
There's no pieces missing that I've observed, but you can see where the concrete is starting to break down.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Yeah, and Kim, I was just going to mention as well that we are calling out some medians to be reconstructed, and some of them will be narrow, and some of them will actually get a little bit wider. But we'll be looking to refresh the landscaping as well in those medians, and you can see on our roll plots with our project materials, we have call outs where those new median reconstructions are gonna occur throughout the project corridor.
Okay, excellent. Thank you. Let's see. Jacob says, in regards to his previous comment, thank you for that. I understand it not being in the scope of this one to add another crossing. He's a resident of the area like Kevin is, and likes the idea of further traffic signals being added, a growing area with more residents, and this will help us all be safer. It isn't all not law-abiding citizens, it's civic design that isn't working with actual humans. So thank you for that comment, Jacob, and then goes on to add that the homeless aren't a single amalgamation of people, as Kevin makes out to be. A combination of light and median barrier will make it so everyone can't cross elsewhere. So thank you for those comments. Let me see. And Marion said that Kelly has a question. Kelly, did you hop on yet? Feel free to unmute yourself if you like.
Thank you so much. First, I want to say thank you for having this meeting. Really appreciate it. I just have a few points that I want to address. The video that was taken in 2018 obviously does not show the growth that we've experienced in the past 3 years, especially. I will say most people are driving at least 10 miles over the speed limit on Scottsdale Road. So with that said, I think green paint and a physical buffer should be the standard in 2022, especially if we're going to honor Vision Zero and the fact that there have been 20 pedestrians killed from 2012 to 2020. Also, if you're thinking about ADA, I would highly advise that when you have the yellow, I don't know the technical term, plates that are down on the ground, find a way.
Warnings. Yep.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Oh, it's okay. That's fine. Thank you. I appreciate that. I find a way to make sure that they stay put, because even on pedestrian paths, people are stealing them and ripping them off. Just a heads up. So if you really want it to stay ADA compliant and not replace that, find a way to, I think, attach them better than what they're being, how they're being attached right now, because the newer ones are being ripped off. As far as stripping, the 2 to 3 feet, 3 feet's minimum. Problem is if it's just stripping, cars don't care. I can't even tell you how many times a buffer doesn't mean anything to them when they don't see green and there isn't a physical barrier. And more so, I think people that drive cars will avoid barriers because they don't want to damage necessarily their vehicle, as opposed to hitting someone. So I think the more visibility you have, I think green paint from start to finish, not just little pieces, is mandatory at this point, especially if you want to honor Vision Zero. And just, we live a half mile away. We are commuters. We cycle for fun, and we'll ride easily 50 miles in a day. We even get our groceries. We don't even drive our cars often. So just a heads up. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, Kelly. And I see Ellie's going to hop on for that one, I think.
Oh, I had unmuted myself for a previous question, but
okay.
I do also want to say that we have a Vision Zero initiative ongoing for safety corridors, and this area is part of that initiative. So I think we have another public meeting scheduled, a different project, but another public meeting next Wednesday evening to talk a little bit about it. And I think it does help to have this safety corridor. The police are kind of aware of the crossing issue, and they're focusing some attention in this area. And I think with the addition of the signage and the barriers, hopefully those three things combined will help address some of this.
Thank you, Ellie. We'll link to that meeting in just a moment if we can. And Kelly, please go ahead.
Yeah, I just want to respond. Yeah, I believe that's addressing Curry Road, not necessarily Scottsdale corridor. I believe Molly Enright, we will be attending that meeting. Not sure if we can also discuss Scottsdale Road at that meeting, but I think they're looking at Mill to Scottsdale Road on Curry for
Yeah.
that safety corridor.
That is one of the areas, but Scottsdale north of Curry is also one of the areas they're looking at.
Perfect. Thank you so much.
Okay, and let's see, I'm not seeing any further questions. If you have not already indicated what neighborhood you live in, could you just jot that down in the chat? And I'd like to see if anyone else would like to weigh in or have any additional feedback that they'd like to share. Okay, Kevin has a feedback that he just sent, just sharing, not to misunderstand his intent. He's for the bike lanes and trying to figure out what makes the roads safer for everyone. He just feels that the light and fence, hold on, the comment's going away. The light and fence to try and address the pedestrians, a huge miss and could create more problems. So thank you, Kevin. We'll capture that. Let's see. Okay, good. And then we have some people sharing their neighborhoods in the comments, so thank you. Okay, was it Kelly that asked for information about the Vision Zero meeting? I will get that to you if you can message me your email address privately.
Sounds good. Thank you.
You're welcome. Okay. Chase or any of the transportation team, would you like to say anything further before we wrap up our meeting today?
Yeah, thanks, Brenda. No, I just remind everyone to please appreciate it if you could take the survey at tempe.gov/forum so we could get all those comments recorded as well. And then, yeah, share it with any of your neighbors about this project. And then again, the project materials, the same presentation will be available at tempe.gov/Scottsdale Road Bike Lanes, and we'll be giving that same presentation, today's presentation, again on Saturday. So thank you all for spending your lunch hour with us and giving your feedback. I really appreciate it.
All right, excellent. This concludes this meeting. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.